This video will be a help video for those who are working on their 4.06 SBW, and here is your SBW. Now, I'm going to give you some assistance on things that you can think about that can assist you with setting up success for this particular problem. And one of the really great ways that we set you up to help you with these SBWs is setting up really good examples that do and target the same things that a lot of the bullet points that you see here are asking for you to do. Okay, so it's really, really helpful on this particular problem to think about everything in the lesson for today. What was it that we talked about? Let's start with the process of identifying the postulates and where I would go, what I would refer to, and what your teachers told you to maybe screenshot or look at as a reference to these postulates that we've been working with. Let's start with the first set, right? So we have this particular set right here: side, 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 angle, side, and hypotenuse leg. I strongly urge you and encourage you to review and to maybe screenshot or have somewhere accessible to you this slide so that you have access to the meaning behind the postulates, right? So these right here are a really great way of describing what each of these is going to be referring to, right? So this is the meaning of those postulates. And so if we're asking you to describe the meaning of a postulate or a theorem, you have access to that language, and we want you to be able to recognize that. You also remember that we had these two: angle, side, angle, 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 side as well, right? So remember, if you're being asked to describe the postulate or theorem that you are using to justify your answer for that question, you want to remember that this right here and this right here that describes the meaning of the postulate or the theorem, and that can be very, very helpful for you right away. So make sure you have access to these and refer back to these when you are trying to do that. So let's think about the SBW itself on the whole. So on the whole, we have 4 different points of interest. Number 1, we first want to identify if the triangles are actually congruent. That's what we're going to specify right here. Now, your task is to determine which one of those 5 possible explanations or postulates could do this. So I'm going to go through an example or two of what that might end up looking like for you. Remember, in class, you should have seen this example right here. Specifically, we're trying to verify if triangles are congruent. So pay attention to the language of the first thing that we said. It's identical to what they're asking you to do for that question. What's not necessarily identical is the reason, right? So here we've gone through an example of how to identify congruent triangles. We first start by looking at what is provided to us. We have a single side and 2 angles, and the angles happen to be such that the side is not in between them. It's not included, in other words, it's non-included. So these 2 triangles are going to be congruent, and look what it spells out: angle, angle, side, right? So I would state that the 2 triangles are congruent. That's kind of the expectation. If you think they're congruent, we say are congruent. If you don't think they're congruent, then just say don't, or just say they're not congruent. Now, having said that, let's take a look at another example and see why they might be or might not be congruent. The other example in class was this pair, right? So we had another pair of triangles, and I'm going to label what I see here. I have 3 sides: side, 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 side. See how I'm labeling it? See how I'm identifying by labeling it like that exactly which of those postulates or theorems from these slides may I refer to? I just said side, 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 for example. So I'm identifying exactly what I should be identifying for that particular postulate. So I'm already aware of the fact that these are also going to be congruent as well, and I would write that out. So what I'm describing first, what I'm saying first is the reason or the statement that I could write for my first sentence and my explanation for my SBW. Again, I'm not saying that yours are congruent. I'm just saying that if you think they are, you would state that they are, and if they are not, you would state that they're not. Okay, how about this example? This one gives us side, angle, side. So what I'm trying to show you is the first strategy I would do is, draw out the triangle you're given and see if you can come up with a labeling system that matches with one of the 5 postulates or theorems that we've got. Since that does match with side, angle, side, I know that these are going to be congruent as well, right? As an example. So once again, I'm identifying the why. Okay, like, are they congruent or not, essentially? What is the reason? I'm thinking about that already without even writing it down because I need to verify that they are. So if I look at those triangles, for example, and I compare them to my screenshot slide, right? You've taken a screenshot. Can you match up any one of these with your specific triangle set? If you can do that, if you can match them up, then you have an example that shows that they're congruent. And then you have everything you would need then to target the rest of the problems available to you. Okay, so there was also this one as well. Remember, we talked about how if it spells a really bad word, that's not going to be one of them, right? This one actually, however, it says side, side, angle, but wait a minute, they're right triangles, so I have to be careful there. So here we have a hypotenuse and a leg, and a hypotenuse and a leg. So of course those are congruent as well. And the reason's because I recognize hypotenuse, leg, right? I'm going back and thinking about that was that last option on this slide right here, right? That's what this is saying for this particular problem. All right. So having said that, let me go back to the initial one I was working on, which was this one. We talked about, angle, angle, side, right? I wrote it down on the diagram. So if you look at the SBW, it's now going to ask you to describe how you know why your triangles are congruent, right? So in my case, for example, I would say that I know this by the angle, angle, side. You can say postulate or you can say theorem. Technically, one of them is actually a theorem, but we'll call it a postulate because that's what our slides are saying, right? And that's what we care about. What we care about mostly is that which one of the 5 is it, and it's angle, angle, side. So next thing I would do is write down that abbreviation, right? It's the first letter of each of those 3 words in the hyphenated compound word there, angle, angle, side. So AAS. And then the best and perhaps most important part of all, and the last part of your problem as well, you're going to have to describe the meaning of your postulate, right? What I wrote out earlier, right? I said angle, angle, side, right? So the meaning of my postulate, angle, angle, side, I'm going to go to this slide, and there it is right there. That right there is the meaning that we were looking for, right? The meaning of our postulate or theorem. Now for me, I'm going to copy that because it's on my tool right now that I'm using, and I'm going to paste it right there, and I can minimize it if I want, and that's the meaning that I am looking for. Okay, now looks like I kind of got my sentence structure there a little bit, but 2 triangles are congruent if 2 pairs of corresponding angles and a set of non-included sides are equal. That's what it represents. As a sentence, we also want to make sure we lowercase that because we are writing complete sentences here. So that's the meaning that I'm talking about. You see how I just used the screenshot, how I just used the slide that contained the meaning of each of those? That's what we want to target. That's what we want to go for. Okay? So when you're going through the others, for example, the next one we had was this one, right? What did I say? I said it was side, side, side. right? Side, side, side. And that's SSS. So then I would go to my slides. I'd be like, wait a minute, what's the SSS one say again? Oh, that's right. This is what the SSS one says, right? Two triangles are congruent if all three corresponding sides are equal in length. So then that would be my meaning. Oops, and I didn't actually quite get the meaning down correctly. So let me go back and copy that correctly. And then I'll go back and paste it in there. Paste image. There we go. There it is. Two different types of copying that happens here. And then I would just make sure. Now for you guys, obviously you're going to type, right? You're going to type your answers in. So make sure you're typing complete sentences when you write it out, right? So that is a second example of how I would go about targeting this SBW, right? What do we do first? We mention like whether it's congruent or not. Then it says we want to name the full postulate name, right? So if you look at this example here, that's exactly what I was doing in some of my examples that I had. You know, my last example I just did, I just fully named the postulate itself right there. That's what I did. This is what I did first, right? I just stated whether they're congruent or not. Then I named the full postulate. Then I actually abbreviated that postulate, right? That's what they're wanting you to do here too. They want you to abbreviate the postulate that you're supposed to be using, whatever that might be for you. And then the last and most important part, truly the most important part, is making sure that you correctly identify exactly what the reason behind that postulate is. What is that postulate essentially saying, in other words, is what we're asking for. And that's what they're asking for in this last part right here. Okay, so I'm hoping that knowing what I showed you, what I would do first with labeling your diagram, I hope that this helps reference you back to the slides that we give you to assist you on how you would write this up. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teachers about this. But this is what you want to be referring to. Refer to your slides. Refer to the slides that deal with the postulates in particular. I think it's like the 5th and 6th slides of the presentation. And use those to help you understand what the meaning of the postulates are, what their name is, what their abbreviation is. And then, as an example of what I did, through labeling your triangles and seeing which of the 5 it matches with, that can help you determine if they are in fact congruent. Hope this helps.